Hello, today we're going to talk about pruning tomatoes and pepper plants. Thank you for joining me today. Now in front of me here you see a hydroponically growing tomato. We'll have further discussion about how we set this up and just generally growing hydroponically in a future episode. But for now I'm actually talking about whether to choose to prune or not to prune your tomatoes and how you would like to do so. I already mentioned that within my garden bed I'm actually using the method that is called a single stem, where you're pruning off anytime there is a sucker. And a sucker is basically on this plant, if you notice where you've got a normal branch that comes out from the stem, and then there's another little branch that's starting up right out of that kind of elbow there. And this has a grow tip on it, which means it will actually grow an entirely new plant. So if you were to let that grow out before cutting it off, you could cut it off, root it, and plant it as its own tomato. When you grow from a single stem method, you actually will just be taking each one of those off right there like that, fairly simple. Not be worrying about making the tomato plant branch out. And part of what you're doing here is actually to control allowing more airflow in if you've got a lot of tomato plants that are planted, really to help contain the plant so that it can grow in a more limited space. Now this one, since I'm growing it hydroponically and it'll be set apart from others, I'm going to go ahead and actually top it. Now when you're topping a tomato plant, you want to make sure that it already has grown a fair amount. I like to make sure that you at least have not only your original leaves, which will be down here, and I think they're actually below the surface here on this particular plant, but then at least another couple sets of 2 leaves on each side. So you go up, and if you notice, we've got leaves here, leaves here, leaves here, leaves here, and well, this is actually a sucker. You notice that the leaves would have been coming off in an additional branch here, but that branch has already been removed, probably because of some wind damage, and you can see there's a little bit of wind damage here too. But anyhow, for this particular plant, I think I'm going to actually cut it off below this junction here, even though you see a sucker that's starting to come out there. And I'm actually comfortable with suckers growing on this, even though I took one off already. And ultimately, any plant, it's good to keep it fairly clean near the bottom, particularly when you're growing in soil, because you don't want there to be splash up from that soil onto those leaves. But at any rate, I'm going to come in right here, and it's going to look a little bit drastic at first, but we're just going to top that right there. And now it's going to promote more growth out of, this is a sucker that's already there. There'll be another sucker that's growing there. There'll probably be one that comes out down here as well. But, and this one right here will obviously grow out. And each of those will do its own process, form their own suckers. The stem will get thicker, and it'll be a more sturdy plant generally because we did that pruning. Now as for this here, because it is actually a grow tip that we cut off, if we wanted, we could pull off these bottom leaves, then put this in water, and it would root out, and we'd actually have a whole new plant here. I'm not going to do that with this particular one at this time, but that is an option. Now we'll discuss pruning pepper plants. I'd always recommend pruning your peppers. Now if you look here, this bird's eye Thai pepper plant already has pretty good leaf development coming out, lots of new leaves shooting out of new locations. But we're just going to prune it here and give it a good top. It'll look pretty dramatic, but this will allow that growth to really flourish. Even pepper plants that aren't quite as bushy as a bird's eye Thai is going to be will be much more bushy because you prune them in this manner. So I'd always recommend going ahead and topping your peppers. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like it below. Please subscribe to the channel to see updates on these tomatoes and peppers and many other things that we're growing in the garden.